Well, let's get the show on the road. Welcome to another gravitational webinar. This one's about escaping the ticketing turmoil. I'm sure you've all been there. You've got all these tickets and you're dealing with how to approve them on Slack, how do you approve them in PagerDuty. I'm joined by my colleague, Ben Arndt, who is the product manager for Teleport and knows all things Teleport. So Ben, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and that cool accent I hear that you've got.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for joining today. Welcome and good morning. I'm Teleport's Director of Product, as Mark said. I'm British. It's the accent. I've worked on a range of monitoring systems, exception trackers, and databases. Now at Gravitational, I'm focusing on access systems. Obviously, I love enterprise ticketing systems. And I was a carefree SSH user until joining Gravitational, and I'll hopefully be sharing some of my journey that I learned on the way on how you can really harden access to SSH, but also still provide more access and flexibility. And if you didn't notice it, the one lie is I do not love enterprise ticketing systems. They are kind of the bane of my existence in the past. And so in this webinar, we'll go through some of our ideas and thought process around how we've created access workflows so you can get access and integrate with your current tooling without a lengthy process. And so who are you? I pulled the list of attendees for this webinar. The majority of you are from DevOps and SRE background. I'm going to be touching on how you can sort of upgrade your SSH infrastructure from keys to certificates. I'll be kind of light on this. We have a really good webinar in our archive from Gus Luxton on how to SSH properly. And this is even vendor agnostic. You can upgrade your OpenSSH setup with this. I'd highly recommend it. For software developers, there shouldn't be anything too new for you, but if you're currently running into problems in your organization about gaining access, you might want to share this with your ops team about getting better access to your systems. For security engineering, locking down access to systems is always more favorable. And there's a few interesting things that we will cover in which you can use techniques to really narrow down the access that you give employees in your organization, but you also make it very easy for break glass scenarios to gain more access. And I know we have a couple of people on the call who have, 1,000 to 5,000 developers in their organization. And that brings its own problems. And so we'll sort of cover how you can use this to scale from, small startups to very large enterprises to sort of get out of the way and get your team done. So
before you continue there, Ben, I just want to let the audience know that we will take Q&A at the end of the session. So if you do have questions, there's a Q&A button in Zoom that you can put it in there. ID, don't put it in the chat. It's easier for us to just monitor in the Q&A. I'll keep track of those, so keep those going. And the first question we really got was, hey, are these slides going to be up on SlideShare? Absolutely. After the session, we will get these posted as well as a transcript. So they don't have to take too many copious notes, but back to you.
Cool, thanks, Mark. So let's talk about offices. These were places we used to go pre-COVID, and there were some magical things about physical offices. Sometimes if you were to plug into the network, you would get access to systems that weren't available on the public internet. And, you're on a webinar about ticketing systems. You might have also had a help desk or a team or some sort of procedure that you'd have to go through for gaining access. But one of the things now, with everyone working from home, these systems have become a lot more difficult to gain access to and getting visibility into what people are doing and what they're accessing. And so traditional help desk will look something like this. It's lots of internal systems and tooling that's been built up over time. They can be very painful to integrate with. When I worked at Rackspace, you'd have 15 to 20 different systems that you need to go to for different teams within the organization. And sometimes it could take a very long time to get the access that you needed. And then if you're an operator and you provide access, do you know what that person did when they gained access to those systems? And if, in our case, if you're using SSH certificates, did you remove the public key from those machines afterwards? What are you doing? So we're going to introduce Teleport. Teleport is our Golang tool that we provide. We have an open source and enterprise product. This webinar mainly focuses on our enterprise customers, thus enterprise ticketing systems. And I'll show you how our tool doesn't get in the way. So to step back a little bit, we'll be focusing on the upgrading from SSH keys to certificates. If going back, I said I was sort of a carefree user. I was in the SSH keys camp. But SSH certificates have been around for about 7 years. They were introduced into OpenSSH in 6.2, but they can be difficult to maintain and manage. And one of the benefits of using a certificate is it's issued for a short period of time, and you can configure teleport for whatever time is good for your organization. But let's say an employee comes in, they log in, they get a certificate for that period of the day. So if their laptop's stolen at the bar at the end of the night, it's okay. The person would have to re-authenticate with their identity provider to get access. And we also provide short-lived kube configs as well, and the same level of auditing. And you might also be thinking, hey, it's 2020, should we be accessing into machines? Is it an anti-pattern? We still see customers having break glass scenarios, like debugging. There's always some team that has root on servers. So that team that you do want to provide access to, you can use teleport to audit limits and scope access. What does the deployment look like? This diagram can be a little intimidating, but I'll quickly go through it. You have your private networks. This could be like your Amazon VPC, and you have your auth gateway. So teleport sort of splits into these two different modes. The auth gateway is our proxy, and you can think of this as a bastion server. So it's a hardened node outside of your network perimeter that we go through rigorous security testing. So you're fine to expose this to the public internet, and you can then use this to access other machines. You might also have heard of jump servers. This normally refers to access between inside of networks, and teleport can work in this mode through trusted clusters. And so the experience of a developer logging in, they use our TSH command line tool. They sort of go through our gateway to our auth server. They talk to our identity provider, which enforces second factor. This denotes what team and role they have. We have a certificate authority that issues the certificate, and they go about their daily business. And so one thing not in this diagram, which we'll touch on in another slide, is rollbacks and rules of how you can approve or deny role escalation. So why ticketing plugins and access workflows? To step back a little bit, ChatOps was this term coined by GitHub, back in the campfire days. And with Slack and other tools becoming more commonplace for conversationally having like your code deployments, your notifications, security event responses. But unless you integrate a tool like Lita or other chatbots, there's some sort of little workflow in that tool. And I'll go through an example of how the Teleport Slack plugin can be used to approve or deny access. And another challenge of teleport sounds great, but it's just another tool in our toolbox. We don't want to be logging into yet another thing. And that's also one of the other benefits of using our plugins. And here we have an example request of our Slack integration, but I'll just show you in our demo. So for this demo, I'm going to be myself here, and we have Travis, our head of customer success, who is the intern in my fake organization. And so these are teleport roles that have been mapped to our email identity that have come through Okta. So I'm the admin in this role. Travis, he maps to intern, but he can request this DBA role. So, here's some YAML on a slide. It can be a lot, it'll be on SlideShare, but you can see you can set up max session TTL. So this is 8 hours of access. Another pretty handy thing you can do is you can set in login. So this would be where you set like EC2 user or host, but you can also configure it to be external logins, or you can use an email address and use a PAM integration to automatically create the Unix user on login. Another very powerful feature is our node labels, and you can use these to filter which nodes they can see, and then you can use principles to limit access. And one part that is cut off here, you can see you can define which roles can request other roles. And so this role can request the DBA role. Okay, so hopefully the demo gods will be good to me today, and I will be demoing our Slack integration.
Oh my goodness, a live demo, Ben. You are brave.
I am.
Very brave.
Okay, so I'm not logged in, so I'm going to log in as Travis using our identity provider. So this browser none, this would normally fire up in a browser, but since I'm on this webinar, I'm just going to open up in another window. And so I'm now currently going through a Okta flow. And I've successfully logged in, and you can see here, I'm now logged in as intern, and I only have the temp principal. And so before I go too deep into how this works, I'll just sort of do a bit of background about keys and certificates. So, you know, this is probably what you're familiar to for when you create public-private keys. And before Teleport, you would publish your public key to your whole team. You might have like Ansible or an S3 bucket that each machine gets those keys. And so Teleport is very similar. It stores all of its certificates in another directory. So here we have all the short-lived certificates used for access. And one of the benefits of using TSHLS is that you can quickly see your hosts. So here we have one of our nodes, and you can see here some of our labels, and there's actually a dynamic label that pulls in the operating system. But if I do TSH/SSH EC2 user at that host, it's access denied. And it is access denied, as you can see. I didn't have access for the logins. I only have temp. I didn't have the correct privileges. So now I'm going to elevate my role and request this DBA role. And in my Slack room here, you can see we have a room here for this access request. We have the ID. We know which cluster it is. It's Travis requesting this DBA role. And it's currently pending, so I'm going to approve his request.
And Ben, this is you acting the Slack thing. We seeing Travis on the left and you on the in Slack. Is that the way of thinking this?
Yes. Yeah. This is sort of, I'm like the admin and the intern. Yep. So now I have these new logins, EC2 user, temp root. So let's try accessing this machine again. And so now I'm like logged into this host. So this is like a EC2 server that I have running. And I'm just going to run this other script here to show you one of our enhanced session recordings. Okay, so now I can exit. Okay, and now I'm log out for the next demo. So one of the other benefits of Teleport is we provide a full audit log. And so this is the web UI that's available on the proxy, which also has a audit log capabilities. So if I come in here, you can see similar sort of UI. And in this audit log, you can see the session that just happened. We ran htop, and then we exited and ran another command. And so this could be very helpful along with our audit log to see what happened. But one of the other benefits, you might have seen, I had like an echo or base64 encoded string, and you can see it curled out to a network request to an example.com. So I might, okay, here we are. And so you get all this information that you can then pipe into like a SEIM solution and sort of alert if there's any sort of weird commands happening for that user. Okay, now I'm going to go back to my slides. Okay. So this a summary, you can approve or deny a request from a Slack room. You have an audit log of the approval session recorded. And one thing I didn't really touch here is the Slack plugin, you can run alongside the proxy or you can run it on another machine, but it has to be available to the public internet for webhooks. There's a few gotchas. So in this scenario, you saw there was a room. Anyone in that room can approve it. So we're best to limit it to a private room. If that's not strong enough for your team, you can also set it up to only notify to a room. And then you can use tcuddle auth, which is a tool that you run on the admin server to approve requests. And then you do also need an extra port for Slack. So PagerDuty, so the next integration we're going to go through. I think it needs little introduction with this audience. It provides very powerful on-call management and alerting and escalation. Okay, so we're just going to do the same thing with PagerDuty. Go back to my share. Okay, so, and I can actually just go straight and let me log in again as Travis.
And you Travis, yeah, I was going to say, so you Travis again, we're seeing you logging in as
yeah, it's Travis. So yeah. Travis for role escalation. So hopefully it has remembered my user. Yep, so now I'm logged in, and because I logged out, I only have the intern role again and temp, so I'll have to go through role escalation again. And so this is sort of a similar kind of like workflow. And one thing you might hear that I'll just give it a second. I have like a ping on my phone. So this is a very handy integration that the PagerDuty app, it's probably not great in this webinar, but you can see on my phone, I have the ability of the notification that Travis requested it. And here I have the ability to approve the requests like on the go. And so now he has been approved.
Again, I'm amazed at the live demo. So yeah.
And if I just go back here, you can see in PagerDuty, you get the same sort of feedback that you can configure PagerDuty to escalate and alert the similar person, whoever's on call, to approve these requests. And then there are also actions in the PagerDuty app that you can approve or deny the request. So you don't need to go back to the tool to get your job done. Okay, let me go back to my slide deck. So another summary, you can approve or deny requests, or you can use the mobile app for actions. I didn't go through the audit log in this example, but you also have the audit log and session recording. It can be set up to auto approve. I'm going to dive into this next. And note also anyone who's on that role can also approve the request. So one of the really cool benefits of PagerDuty is it has this very advanced scheduling system. And part of this is that you can connect your Okta user identity, which is the email address, also with your PagerDuty user, which would also be an email address. And you can define a period of time whoever's on call. If they request a role, they would automatically get that role approved if they're on call. And this is a very powerful feature because you could, if you're doing follow the sun or you have limited on call for your security team, whoever's on call when they're not on call, they have a very limited role, but when they're on call, they get a much more extensive role. And so you sort of under provisioning the resources for that user. And so in my case, if I was on duty and I requested super admin, it would automatically get approved and no one else would need to help me. But if Gus needed it, he could also request it and you could go through a similar flow to approve it. And these plugins configured with sort of Turmoil configs, which is very similar to YAML, and it's as simple as just sending like a true flag. And if you have multiple service IDs, you can just sort of configure and run multiple of these. Another thing I haven't touched on yet is how you auth this with Teleport. And so you export keys and certificates that access the Teleport API. And these do need access to the auth server. So there's a little bit of hardening there. We have two other plugins. We have Mattermost and Jira. Mattermost is an open source chat tool. I think Jira needs a little introduction. And these are open source plugins. We actually worked with an external development team, the Evil Martians, to help expand some of these plugins and extend our API. So if you go to this Git repo, you can see some of the examples of how they have built and extended the Teleport API to build these plugins. And this can be a good foundation if you have your own internal tooling that you want to integrate with. Also, if you have any kind of requests that you think are probably more generic, like you really want Microsoft Teams, please leave a issue in our tracker. And since this has been released, we've already got like a bunch of feedback. And so we're extending our approval workflow. We have this request for discussion currently open. Gravitational is an open core company. So please review this, leave comments. The more open feedback we get, the better our product is. And for this extended approval workflows, these are some of the key benefits. So one very helpful thing is being able to request access to clusters. This is very helpful if you are an MSP, which is the multiple service provider, and you're managing other people's clusters and you want to access those clusters and maybe get the owner of that cluster to approve it. Accessing based on some ticket number that you've already been assigned or a request. This will be very helpful if a developer needs access to a system, but they don't know exactly what they need to access. They can send in a note. When the operator running Teleport gets that, they can create a role, or it can be programmatically created to provide access narrowed specifically for what their request is. And another feature is to just request access to specific nodes. And we'll add a flag so you can poll the API manually so you get the access request approved, so it's not always in real time. All right, so Mark, the questions.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So for the audience there, definitely we've got a couple of questions coming already, but add any more, just click on the sort of Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. The first question I have here, Ben, is, are the plugins in open source? The thing you were showing from Evil Martians and stuff, is that all in open source?
Yeah, it's on github.com, gravitational teleport-plugins.
Great. Second question was the whole, this whole workflow access, is this available in open source as well, or is this just part of the enterprise product?
It's only in our enterprise offering.
Cool, only in enterprise. So drilling down a little more into maybe the plugin share question is how hard is it to actually write these plugins in Go?
So it uses our gRPC API. We have many examples which are very flexible and extendable. We also have a generic webhook. And so if you have a tool like Zapier or some other automation, that makes it a little bit easier to integrate with your tooling. Okay. So you need to ideally be a Go developer, but if you use the webhook, if you want to integrate with other tools.
Great. Another one on some of this proves, how does Teleport know what on-call schedule to check for auto approval?
It is tied in PagerDuty. So when you create the service, you can, let me come in here. So we have configuration, we have services.
So the auto approval thing you're going to, this is a function of PagerDuty.
Yeah, PagerDuty is kind of like the brain of who's on call.
Got it.
So we basically send the name. I can't find it right now, but I can follow up for that question.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, so I think clarity is just that the stuff you're showing there, it's sort of a PagerDuty functionality. It's whatever PagerDuty uses to determine on-call schedules.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Another question came in is, hey, will this recording and slides be available afterwards? Absolutely. We'll post the recording of this, give us a couple of days. The slideshow will go up as well as sort of a transcript. So for those of you worried about that. What other questions? I think the last question I have here, and what was around auto approval, I think we discussed too, is auto approval a teleport function or PagerDuty? So we already discussed that one. I think those were the main couple more just came straight in as about to close up there in question. So if we use ServiceNow, would we be able to use the webhook for determining the on-call person?
We did research ServiceNow, and I know we have another customer looking at it. I think it depends on the version. It can be a bit complicated just because the ServiceNow product's, sort of huge. So I think the best case would be, get in touch with us. We can probably figure out some sort of solution for you.
Okay, awesome. And Vladimir, if you're out there, just want to, I'll read this question. I didn't, and if you understand it, Ben, let me know. But is it the same service as for sending approval requests? In this situation, people seeking auto approval receive the PagerDuty message.
People seeking auto approval.
I wasn't sure.
No, so if you if I'm reading this correctly, if you're trying to request, if you're auto approved, no one's notified.
Okay.
If that makes any sense in the PagerDuty world.
Yeah. Vladimir,
I know Vladimir. I can follow up afterwards with him.
Okay,
thanks for answering.
Hey, no problems. Maybe any last questions out there? I think those are the ones that sort of I see in the queue. No more jumping out. So Ben, definitely thank you for your time, and thank you for your efforts of going through this. What is sort of like the next sort of, if someone's sort of interested in this and wants to get involved, where would you send them to? What are the main next steps for everyone?
Yes, I mean, this might be a bit deep in the weeds, but if you're already a Teleport user, I would go through the Teleport Approval Workflows doc. Like I mentioned, you do need the enterprise products, so contact our sales team and they can get you a POC and trial license set up so you can try this out. If you're an open source user and you just want to use this for accessing infrastructure, you can just download Teleport and run it. This workflow's not in the open source edition, but it's still a great product to use. And also on GitHub, we're an open core company. You can see we have a request for discussion. So create issues. Feel free to reach out to us on GitHub.
Well, hey, Ben, appreciate your time and effort. And like Ben said, if you do have questions, reach out to us. We also have a community website. You can also, general questions there. But thanks to everyone that's attended the webinar. Let your friends and family know to watch the recording if everyone was able to see it. And Ben, thanks a lot for your time and your ability to do 2 live demos without anything crashing. So that's a new record.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.